Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. I'm Olivia Natureman. I'm with the West Hills Neighborhood Council. Sorry, I had a little difficulty getting in. And we'll be co-hosting this session with Ms. Dujon. Did I say that right, Ms. Dujon? I think you're muted.
Yes, hi. Dorsey is fine.
Dorsey. All right, and it's Olivia. Yeah.
You did pronounce it correctly. It is Dujon.
Okay. It's so good to see everyone. So we'll give just a couple of minutes for everyone else to come in. Welcome to all of our panelists today. We're so grateful that you could be here. And we're here to speak about homelessness and housing in Los Angeles as cut up a lot, and brought in. So we will give it a couple of minutes and then we'll open it up. We're not supposed to start till 11:30 officially, so we can wait until 11:30 and then get started so people have a chance to at least go get something to drink and go to the restroom.
I haven't really talked about how this is going to play out. I came into it rather late, so just give me an idea of how you're going to proceed.
Yeah, it's much the same. It's much the same, but we're here to talk about the work that neighborhood councils can do, and work that they maybe do that is not helping to solve homelessness in the neighborhoods. And so these are challenging times, definitely not one solution for each part of the city. So to kind of open it up to questions, and then we do have guest speakers that we're hopeful that we can throw out some questions and then have our panelists answer some and then have a discussion. It's really not supposed to be a one-way. This is a networking session, so it's people to kind of like bring out ideas, not an informational session. So it's kind of throw things out, have our panelists start the conversation, and then invite everybody in to kind of brainstorm, make connections, network, and find ways that we can strengthen that fabric, because little piecemeal efforts all over the city for different parts aren't going to be enough, right? Which we've already seen.
I get it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in about 3 minutes, we'll get started then. And welcome to everybody. If you do feel comfortable when we get started, having your camera on, it's nice to have a face with the name. If you don't, or if it's a technical issue, that's fine too. Hi, Pat. And then please feel free to unmute yourself and say hi or talk if you see people as more people are joining.
Hi, Olivia.
Hello. Yeah, welcome everybody for coming in. No, I'm sorry, Miss O'Neill, we can't hear you right now. Nope. There you go. You're unmuted. No, we can't hear you. You are unmuted, but we can't hear anything. All right, welcome everybody coming in. We're going to give it just a few minutes for other people to get connected, as we weren't officially supposed to start until 11:30.
Hello, Olivia.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm so glad you're here. I'm well, thank you. During
Thank
these
you.
crazy times.
I'm not too big on the video, but I'll do it for the sake of
I am so appreciative of that. No one is a big video person. Nobody wants to see themselves talk.
Well, that is my area of profession, so I'm on camera quite a bit, but personally, yeah, not so much, but it's all good.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Yeah.
Great. Perfect. Okay.
Awesome.
Great.
I'm so glad. All right. And so they've also set it so that the little ding goes off every time someone joins or leaves. So we might have that lovely feature going on throughout our conversations. But that's all right. Every time a bell goes off, someone gets their wings, or so they say.
Yes.
It's a good thing. There you go.
An angel gets their wings.
That's right. Wings all around. There you go.
It's a Wonderful Life.
That's If you say so, Mr. McDowell.
I do. Ms.
Natureman, but you can just call me Olivia.
Okay, Liv.
Yeah. There we go. Welcome everybody coming in. We're going to get started in just a minute. If you feel comfortable putting your camera on once we get started, that would be fantastic, as it's really nice to put a face with the name. If you don't, or you don't have the technology, or if you're on your phone, that's fine. You do have the power to unmute yourself. I'll also be moderating the chat, so you can feel free to type things in the chat if you have questions. This is a very informal session, so this isn't something where you're being talked at. I will do a very brief presentation with Dorsey, who is my co-host today. And so we'll just be kicking it off and starting everything off and then introducing our panelists. We're going to start with a few questions for our panelists. And then from there, we really hope that it becomes more of a networking, sharing best practices, ideas, and more of an informal back and forth than it is, here is the solution, because we don't have one. So we're here to strengthen that fabric and talk about what's going on around the city and try to find out ways that we can boldly move forward to rise and tackle the challenges in front of us. As I think I heard mentioned in the Congress, it's not a hand-wringing session. So we all know the challenges are daunting. We all know what is going on in front of us and what's been happening. And so this is really more solutions focused and trying to figure out how we can support each other, network, know each other, and find ways to support the people who are experiencing homelessness and are unhoused in our communities, as well as housing issues going forward, so we can start to address. So with that, I think we're going to get started. We're at 11:31. So Ms. Dorsey, Ms. Dujon, would you like to introduce yourself, and then we'll just start off from there.
Okay, yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Dorsey Dujon. I happen to be on the planning committee for the Congress of Neighborhoods. I also founded an organization called Make Music LA. I am on the advisory board for Arts for LA, which is an advocacy organization, and other organizations that have to do with the arts. My whole idea in life is that every child deserves a music education and deserves a great education, and it's actually made better through music and the arts. That's me.
Well, we're so glad that you're here, and we'll just be moderating today. Like we said, we're not the presenters, we're just kind of the facilitators. I'm Olivia Natureman. I am a board member with the West Hills Neighborhood Council. This is my 5th year. I also am here actually today in a capacity of representing WAVNA, which is the West Valley Neighborhood Alliance on Homelessness. So in the West Valley, we have 16 neighborhood alliances who have bonded together. Pat is one of our members, Pat Bates, who have joined together to try to address issues of housing and people who have issues in terms of housing equity in the West Valley. And so I've been asked to come to just facilitate, to open it up, but it's not about, as I said, what we have anything to present in terms of a presentation. It's more opening up the discussion. And so I want to introduce our panelists. So we are very fortunate today to have here to help kick off our conversation, which we hope, which will be very much a conversation. Pastor Stephanie, and I hope if I mispronounce your name, you will correct it as we go, Jager, who is the ex-director for NoHo Home Alliance. Pastor Jager, are you here? Hi, all right. Could you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work in terms of housing?
Absolutely. So my name is Stephanie Jager. I am the director of NoHo Home Alliance, which is a very small community-based response to homelessness and the lack of housing in the East San Fernando Valley. I also happen to be on the NoHo Neighborhood Council. I happen to be the vice president, but I did serve as the chair of the homelessness committee of our neighborhood council, but now I actually serve as chair of the public safety committee, which is a really interesting combination and something we might want to lift up as we look at ways that the neighborhood councils can help move things forward in regard to homelessness and housing. No Home Alliance is not an agency. We're a community organization And we mobilize residents to address homelessness in various ways. One way is that because there were so few services in the East San Fernando Valley and no place for a person experiencing homelessness to go and connect with services, we started what we call a pop-up drop-in access center. We do this on the basis of what we call asset-based community development. That means that we take an existing space, like the fellowship space of an existing church that's underutilized, and then we use that space for the sake of the community. Because of COVID-19, we had to move all of our programming outside, so, but we're still at the same location, which is a church, St. Matthew's Lutheran Church in North Hollywood, that I also happen to be the pastor of, which makes it a lot easier to marshal those resources for the community. But it's a model that we see in various parts of the city. In terms of housing, we do a lot of housing advocacy. We have an advocacy team that educates. We do trainings. We teach people how to do really effective 1-minute public comments so that they can go before neighborhood councils or planning commissions or city council and offer up their positions, their views, whatever their position is. But what we do support the development of No Home Alliance, supports the development of a wide range of housing. We also really believe in burden sharing. Every neighborhood has a role to play. Every person has a role to play in addressing homelessness. And how can we do that together in a shared way so that not one neighborhood is overburdened and is the one that is having to solve all of the issues. We really believe that every resident, housed or unhoused in LA City, has a role to play. And I'll leave it at that, and hopefully that will bring some conversation.
All right, thank you, Pastor Jager. We really appreciate that, and especially, I think you saying like elevating and bringing those discussions to the table, that's really something that I think I'm hopeful that we can do today, is to amplify causes that we're working on, and then also to bring those issues to the forefront. So if you have something, to bring to the table that's a point of view or something that hasn't been brought, once we introduce our panelists, then please open up that discussion. Because I think until we see it from many different perspectives and bring those unique actions, like the things that you are doing with your asset-based community development, that's really, really interesting to me, and we'd love to hear more about it. I think we'll be able to have a really rich discussion, and welcome to everybody who has just joined us if you're just coming in. Next, we'd like to introduce Andrew Silver. He is the president of No Home Alliance. Andrew, are you here?
I am.
Hi, Andrew.
Good morning. Good to meet everybody. So I'm a board member of No Home Alliance, and we have our wonderful dynamic leader, Stephanie Jager. Thank you, Stephanie. And I'm also co-founder of the East Valley Alliance, which is modeled after the West Valley Alliance. And thank you for your inspiration, Olivia. You guys do a great job, and I want to bring that same energy and coalition to the East Valley. So maybe we should meet and get and chat about how to do that.
That is what today is all about. So yeah, go right ahead.
So in addition to that, I'm on the SPA 2 steering committee. So that we're in SPA 2, which is led by LA Family Housing, and once a month, leaders of the various organizations, service providers that address homelessness in the San Fernando Valley and SPA 2 area get together and talk about funding and strategy and housing availability and placement. And then there's also the San Fernando Valley and Santa Clarita Valley Homeless Coalition, which is a broader group of the people that actually implement the strategies of the steering committee. And the way that I got involved with these organizations is through the neighborhood council system. I'm formerly chair of the Studio City Neighborhood Council Homelessness Committee, and I set about creating alliances with the service providers in SPA 2 to bring those resources to our community. And that's the role I would encourage the people listening in today is learn who your SPA 2 lead is, learn who your local service providers are, and that's how I met Stephanie Jaeger, our director, and got involved with that organization. And we've brought tremendous resources into our community and have been effective in housing the homeless in our community. So by reaching out to these organizations and building those alliances, you can really make a difference in your community. In terms of outreach, and one thing that we're working to do with the East Valley Alliance is to bring information and forums to the community and educate the community about homelessness. It's an incredibly complex subject, and so we want to push back against some of the stereotypes that are out there. I think that's important to do, because there's a lot of damaging stereotypes, and as I've become more involved, I've learned that those stereotypes don't hold up to the reality when you meet and get to know people, and the great work that is being done and the accomplishments that are being made. That's all I have. That's my pitch and my intro.
Well, thank you, Andrew. We really appreciate you being here. I see that Ron Midgo. Ron, you had your hand raised. Did you have a question for NoHo?
Yeah, actually, before I get into homelessness, I just wanted to ask Stephanie Jaeger, have you been to any of my Alliance meetings? You're muted, Stephanie. Stephanie, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Not yet.
Stephanie,
No.
you need to unmute. Oh, there you are.
Can you
say-
repeat your question? I couldn't hear it.
Yes, have you been to any of my Alliance meetings?
We actually started the Alliance, Paul, Storial, and I. Unfortunately, you scheduled those meetings during our regular Public Safety Committee time, so I haven't been able to attend.
No, actually, I roll the meetings from one weekday to the next. So the first one was on Friday, and then Monday, and then Tuesday. So if you get a chance, I would love for you to come. And for anybody who cares, that's the Public Safety Alliance meeting. Public Safety Chairperson's Alliance meeting. Anyway, so on the topic of homelessness, let me preface this by saying,
So, Mr. Migdal, I'm so sorry. I'm going to, if you had a clarifying question, that's fantastic. I'm just going to ask if we can wait to do the networking after we've had our panelists present. Would you just mind if I put you after our panelists introduce themselves? And then
I don't mind at all. Thank you for letting me know.
All right. No, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to interrupt in any way. And Dorsey, if you have anything, jump in, please, at any point. Like, please, please, please. All right, so I wanted to also introduce Nina Womack, who is here with the North Area Development Council and is also a homeless liaison. So Nina, are you here? I am not seeing you. I just want to see if you are muted. All right, Nina, if you are here and I'm just not seeing you, just please jump in and let us know. I don't see you here on the participants list. So with that, we're going to go over to Ms. O'Neill. So I think that we can hear you, hopefully
Yes.
now.
Hopefully,
Go ahead,
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Great.
Who's the Deputy City Attorney. So take it away.
Hi, I'm an assistant city attorney with the city attorney's office, and I do homeless policy for the city attorney's office, both on our criminal and our civil side. So I'm happy to, I know you're going to brainstorm a lot of different ideas. Our office does give the neighborhood councils legal advice, but not in this kind of open forum. So if you have legal advice sort of questions about what your neighborhood council can or can't do, you should go back to your the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment and seek your legal advice that way. But I'm happy to be here. Our city attorney website page, if you go under homelessness, we have a link to many of the new and important cases that have come out around what the city can and can't do around homelessness, some frequently asked questions, and other links to what our office does around homelessness. Thank you. And I can only be here till 12:30, I'm sorry. So I'll have
That's all right. And so Ms. O'Neill, would you please, if you'd be so kind, could you put the link to that specific webpage into the chat? down below, and then
I think
the
so, yes, if I'm
participants-
able to figure that out. Yes. I'll
all
try
you
to
do is go copy the URL and then just paste it into the chat, and then people
Great,
can just
okay.
click the link. Thank you very much. All right, and so I'm just gonna last call Ms. Womack. If you have joined us, I know some people had difficulty logging in. I did, so I'm glad. All right, and so with that, then we want to, especially mindful of time, because I know other people can't stay the whole time, to open it up. And what we're really looking for today in our session is to try to brainstorm. Again, it is not an informational session where you're getting information. It's really for us to look in these challenging times of how we can rise together, how we can, as Andrew pointed out, network and get those connections and bridges going. I see lots of people on this call that I know who are doing innovative and amazing work across this city. And I want to open it up then so that everybody can bring to the table what it is that they're working on, ideas that they have for networking and how to collaborate, or innovative solutions that they would like to bring to the table. You can raise your hand with the feature on the participants. If you don't know how to do that, you click on the participants and then you will see on there, it says hand raising. So you can raise your hand, or you can type in the chat the word stack. And if you type that just like that in the chat, then that also lets me know that you want to speak, and then I will just call in the order that I see people. I am going to ask that you please be mindful of time and try to keep your comments, you know, within a reasonable amount so that everybody has a chance to have a conversation back and forth. All right, and so with that, I'm going to go back to Mr. Migdal first because I rudely cut him off. So Mr. Migdal, go right ahead and let us know what you were going to say.
Okay, this is not a solution. This is a request for help or solutions on how to solve a problem. And I am on the board of West LA Sawtell Council.
How's
And
Corey Schmidt doing?
I'm sorry?
How's Corey Schmidt doing?
He's no longer on the council.
I know he's no longer alive. He died in custody.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Of course. You guys know that. We talked about that. I'm the one that Law is chasing after now.
Okay,
Yep.
well, sorry about that.
I'm good with it. Sorry for you and George Francisco.
Thanks.
Brian Olf's got a good owie coming.
So Mr. Fanning, I
Okay,
look forward to hearing your voice after. Again, if you
No
have
problem.
something to
I was
go,
just informing him that Corey Schmidt died. That was their secretary. The one that threw Molotov cocktails in the city of Santa Monica.
Okay, thanks for that update.
No problem.
So if I could continue,
Go
I'm glad
ahead.
to see Attorney O'Neill here because she's been to some of our meetings. And we have a homeless encampment right by the Smart and Final in West LA. It's just west of Bundy on Ohio. And it's become a serious problem. I have to preface this by saying, from my cultural background, I have Rahmunas on these people. You know, I have a lot of empathy and sympathy and pity for what homeless people go through. I mean, I come home and I've always got groceries in the house, and I almost cry when I think about what these people are going through. But I got to tell you, it's become really difficult. There's an encampment, and they always cover the sidewalk. They have huge tents, and I am somewhat disabled. I walk with a cane, and I use a mobility scooter. And their neighbors who live nearby there are just going through the ceiling. One of whom has a disabled son who she pushes in a stroller, and she can't get by. And so my question is, I know there's a federal guideline that you cannot move these homeless people around when during this COVID period. But my question is, there's established case law, ADA case law, which requires 36 inches of clear passage along the sidewalk. And we've talked to LASA, we've talked to LAPD, we've talked to sanitation, and it's impossible to pass. and it's really a problem for a lot of people. Does anybody have any suggestions on how to approach this?
So, Mr. McDowell, I really appreciate you bringing this to the forefront. And so I do want to honor people's hands in order. And so what we're trying to do overall today is, again, if you have individual issues, we're pretty aware of what the issues are. And so this really isn't elevating like each issue individually in our neighborhoods, although I understand, especially accessibility issues are important. It's really for us to elevate solutions. And so as we're going forward, hopefully someone's going to present one that's going to give you then some tools or something to work with. And so with that, I want to pass it over to Ms. Fallon. So Helen, are you here?
Yes, I'm muted. Yeah.
You're not muted. We can
I'm
hear you loud and clear.
also addressing a question to to Ms. O'Neill. I live in Venice, and we have a tremendous homeless problem, as I'm sure all of you are aware. We have an awful lot of service-resistant homeless, and beyond that, we have encampments that are filled with bicycles that are clearly been stolen. And I'm very concerned about the fact that the city has not passed an ordinance on eliminating bicycle chop shops. These are criminals living among the homeless. I don't feel so sorry for the criminals. I feel very bad about people who are experiencing homelessness, but I think these criminals are using the encampments to hide among the homeless, and the city isn't addressing that. The city of Long Beach has passed an ordinance, and I don't really understand why the city of LA is paralyzed on this. And to Mr. McDowell's issue, our council, and I was one of the people who helped sponsor it, we did file a CIS with the city about addressing the issue of keeping the sidewalks clear for the 3 feet. I think the lack of enforcement is the enforcement is the solution. I don't think it's something somebody's going to come up with a creative idea. We're supposed to go out there and politely ask them to move. Other than, I did find out you could put up signs, and the police say if there's signs and it's posted that you can't block the access, they can then enforce. So that's something to think about.
Do you want me to clarify some of the things that have been said? Or okay.
Yes, that'd be
So
great.
first of all, there's no federal law that's requiring the tents to be up right now because of COVID. So the city council looked at the CDC guidelines that came out about 6 months or so ago and were updated only once about homeless encampments. And those guidelines, for example, have things like if there are no alternate locations for people to go for shelter, it would be a good idea not to have them take their tents down because you would further expose everybody to COVID. They also suggested keeping the tents 15 feet apart, and they also suggested that everyone in the encampments wear masks. The council looked at the guidelines and then as a policy decision adopted the idea to suspend the section 5611, which requires people to take their tents down during the day. So that section is temporarily suspended. And so because of that, when sanitation would normally come out to do a larger comprehensive cleanup, they can't ask anyone to take their tents down. So they can only do spot cleaning and pick up hazards. Nothing that the council has done prevents sanitation from picking up or moving objects that block the ADA, which is 36 inches of passable flat sidewalk. Nothing has suspended that. And then I think you guys had one more question about the bike chop shops. Absolutely, if the council office, I believe they were going to do a motion on that. So if they do a motion on that, then our office can help and write an ordinance that addresses the bike chop shop specifically. I know it's a big problem in Venice.
So can sanitation come and cut off the 2 feet of their tent that's blocking the sidewalk?
They can either move or remove the tent. They will try to just have them move it as a first solution. If not, they can seize, remove, and they have to store anything that is not hazardous. It was also the woman from Venice had said about posting signs about blocking ingress and egress. That's probably just to help give an idea to the folks living on the sidewalk where they can and can't sleep. It's not a requirement under the code, but I could see how LAPD would like that up there. So they also, because they're very strained with resources, to know where the enforcement lies.
Their hands are tied.
I don't know if their hands are tied, but they're, you know,
Oh,
it helps them direct since they are quite overwhelmed.
I'm gonna ask that we have
networking thing. Is there a way to actually get in contact with you? Because you do have a very strong and valid voice in Venice, and I have a lot of documentation like George Francisco paid me for. Same with Soledad before she was on the board, along with Vicky Holiday. So I'd like to get into the public's hands.
So I would like very much if people could raise their hands so that we honor the order that people have waited, because people are waiting to speak. And so if you have anything in the, I know that's the hard part with Zoom. I teach high school. It's really challenging to do both. I agree with you. And so right here, I think it would be great if you can see like people have posted into the chat. You are welcome to, and then if people have contact information that they can share, they can either send it privately with a direct message, or they can post it if they feel comfortable into the group chat. And so that's an excellent way to network. So then you can also carry on these conversations outside and find those answers. And so if you've spoken once, I'm going to ask that you type your questions or comments into the chat until other people have had a chance to speak. And then if you look in the chat, you can see like Mr. Silver, Andrew has given a response, Mr. Migdal, about care teams is another potential solution. I see Renee Sabshin has also put in concerns about.
Can I follow up on the question?
I'm going to ask Mr. Bigdell if you just wait just 1 second and type it into the chat, and then hopefully then it can be followed up on in the chat, because I want to give Ms. Ahmed a chance to speak, Noreen, who has been waiting patiently. And so it's a lot of people. We want to make sure everyone has a chance to get things out before we return back again. So if you've had a chance to go back and forth, if you can just put it into the chat, and then we'll keep moving along. All right, and so I wanted to, oh, she disappeared. Noreen, your hand went down, so I'm not sure if you still want to speak. Oh, go ahead, go right ahead then.
Okay. Yeah, just taking it down. All right, well, thank you. So one, it's great to just hear like all of your thoughts on this, and I think this is pretty connected to what I've been hearing. Really something, so my name is Noreen, so I'm with the Northwest Neighborhood Council and co-chair our homelessness committee. And one of the things that has really been coming up, and what I'm realizing that neighborhood councils really have a specific role in, is really to address the stigmatization that Andrew Silver brought up, and also really figuring out ways to be merging the concerns of house members and unhoused members. Like, I really think that's what our place in this is, because I work with activist groups and they're doing some really powerful work, but you know, we're not exactly there. We're not part of the city. And it's like, where's our role in this? And it's really how to bring these relationships together. And so, you know, it's kind of sometimes to be hearing things about frustrations people have with the unhoused community. And hearing, you know, just concern and fears that are coming out. I was recently part of trying to get boulders removed that were put down where people lived. And to me, it's really painful to hear that that's an acceptable thing to people, just to just move or displace people when they're dealing with the worst things that a person can deal with. And so, you know, I think really what I would love to figure out for our council, and what I would love insight on, I know somebody brought up something about music and the arts and trying to work with that. And I really think that might be a key into this, but I really want to figure out how we are creating toolkits and creating ways for community members to be talking about this. So whether, because right now we don't talk about how polarized this issue is, and it really is becoming deeply polarized, where there's people who we have the same end goal, but there's different means for how people want to create it. And that's really problematic, because we need to get to the place where we're saying we all have the same end goal, where we want to see people have safe and comfortable housing, and not go, we're going to push people here or drag them there, but we're going to work with them and find solutions. So I would love from this group to really figure out, you know, how, whatever you believe, wherever you are on the spectrum of how we deal with this issue, how do we get on the same page so that people who have the opposite ideas than you can still be working with you to find a solution that's thoughtful and respectful. And I think that's the key thing with this, is it has to be respectful to unhoused members, but it also has to be respectful to somebody who's dealing with disabilities and can't get down a sidewalk, to all these different communities, and figuring out how to get that together. So yeah, that's really what I want to express, and I would love to be working with people on this.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmed, so much for your insight and your thoughts. We appreciate it. And I'm going to bounce it over to Jesse R. Jesse, you had your hand raised?
Yes, good day, everybody. Yes, I'm Jesse R. from our Leader Neighborhood Council in the San Fernando Valley, East San Fernando Valley. I don't understand why we have to find permanent buildings to house homeless people and within the city of LA. If news reports are saying that each unit for one homeless person costs about $600,000, that's just one unit for one person. It does not address any of the services and rehabilitation, medicines, or the healthcare that that homeless person needs. One option, one solution that I have discussed, but and I'll be honest, I don't want him in my neighborhood, and because there's always going to be opposition. But there are these tents made of aluminum. I think the city of San Diego already has them. There's a couple of them in downtown LA. Climate controlled tents. Maybe they probably can go about 300,000 or 400,000 each, but they could house about 200 people. And I think that it's more advantageous to homeless to end the homelessness situation and leave more money available for their rehabilitation and treatment programs of the homelessness. But with that being said, that does not mean I want them in my neighborhood either, because I did not buy a home or somebody did not rent a unit in an apartment to have a homeless shelter right across the street either. It is unfortunate, of course, with the homelessness, how those the people came about being homeless, whether it's trauma, health reasons, or being priced out of the housing market. There are many factors, but this thing that we have to build permanent buildings in neighborhoods where people don't want them, we need to move away from that, because once the unions got involved and all the housing industry and the construction industry, it really ballooned the price of these homeless units, and that's not helping anybody. Yes, some people are getting housed already, but when did we approve this 1.4 or 1.2 billion package? Was in 2016, and 4 years later, I don't even know how many units have been built with that money. But some news articles indicated that about maybe 10,000 or 12,000 or 15,000 units will be built with that amount of money.
So Jesse, your concerns are heard, and I appreciate you bringing them to the table and your solution and talking about other ways of innovative housing that we could do. So we're going to take that and go on to, and I'm sorry, Gloria, if I mispronounce your name, Dioum. I'm so sorry if I spotted that.
It's June. It's June. Could you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I am in the South Robinson Neighborhood Council, and lately I have noticed that the tolerance level for the homeless is really growing thin. One narrative that's going around over and over again is the fact that there is plenty housing that is available to the homeless, and the homeless should not be, parking themselves under the bridges or near people's homes. And this narrative is growing stronger and stronger. And I don't have the education to respond to that. So could someone help me understand, is there really sufficient housing for the homeless? And why are they not going to those facilities if these facilities really exist? I don't understand.
Can I just hit some of the things that this caller and the previous caller said?
Yeah.
This state does not have a right to shelter law like New York State does. So here, we are not obligated in this state to provide housing. So he was talking about permanent, so there's different kinds of housing. There's permanent supportive housing that comes with, that's quite expensive, because the first floor of that permanent supportive housing is for service providers. So it makes it quite expensive. Then you have affordable housing, you have shelter housing, you have interim housing, you have emergency shelter housing. There's a big spectrum of different kinds of housing. If you look at LAHSA's website, it's much better than it used to be. LAHSA really lays out the different kinds of housing that are available that they fund. There is still private charity funding that doesn't go through LAHSA, that won't be on the website, but the rest of it's on the website. There is not a mandate from that new federal case, the Boise case, that requires people to be housed in a house or apartment before there is enforcement. They just have to be offered a shelter bed that's appropriate for them. If you looked at the numbers of LAHSA shelter beds in the county or in the city even, it is far less than the total number of homeless people. So if everybody who was homeless at the same time wanted to go into a shelter, you wouldn't have enough space. On any given day, though, there is an empty bed, maybe 50, 20, depending on the size, somewhere in the city, mainly focused in Skid Row because that's where the most money has gone into building historically in the city. However, the Department of Health Services from the county has recently come in and mandated that many of the congregate, meaning people who live together in the same sort of shelter, because of COVID, they have to reduce their numbers. So where maybe there was a few shelter beds at the Weingard Center, usually has beds, VOA in South LA usually have beds, they have reduced all of those numbers because of COVID. So just keep that in mind. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm just trying to lay out some facts that are out there.
I did want to also take it back to our panelists. Thank you so much, Ms. O'Neill. I wanted to take it back to our panelists if they wanted to weigh in, and then Ms. Brown has been waiting. So we want to make sure that we are also giving more people a chance to speak. So if Mr. Silver or Ms. Jaeger, if you wanted to weigh in, or if Ms. Womack, if you've come in, please feel free.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate what Ms. O'Neill said, is what Jesse R. was referring to as permanent supportive housing. That is for the most severely ill, severely disabled people that need a lot of support. And so it's designed to be built out to 10,000 units and is not by any means the solution to homelessness and was never meant to be. It's only for the most difficult situations. There's many, many types of housing being provided to the homeless. And as also stated, it is not near enough to address the 41,000 homeless in the city and 66,000 homeless in the county. This is one of the false stereotypes out there. There is nowhere for these people to go. There is no housing. The city has done a tremendous job in creating housing over the last year. There's now 30 bridge housing sites, and most of those sprouted up within the last year. In CD2, we've opened up 2 bridge housing sites. They were filled up immediately. Yeah. In our experience with Project Room Key and bridge housing, when places open up, they are filled immediately. I also want to state that in SPA 2, the success rate for placing homeless in housing, 93% stay in the housing. So let's address the stereotype. The homeless want to be housed. When housing becomes available, people want to be in a roof. It is incredibly difficult. It is the most hard thing you can imagine to be out on the street, sleeping on the sidewalk. People want to have a roof over their head. When they get a roof over their head, they take advantage of services available and they stay housed. And that's what we need to be working towards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silver. And Ms. Jaeger, you had your hand up, and then we're going to go to Tracy Brown and then Aaron Fanning. You were next after that. So go ahead, Ms. Jaeger.
Olivia, I also wanted to kind of just say something just in the middle of all of this. Yeah. And that is that I think one of the first things that has to happen is that we have to really educate the public and the stigma of homelessness. Right now, we've got even more people in the city, people who had jobs, who had maybe more than one job, and now they have no jobs. So there are going to be even more people that are on these lists or looking for housing. there is no affordable housing in the city of Los Angeles. In every neighborhood you go into, the prices of housing has risen. And then even with the organizations that help, because there's such a burden now, a lot of the services that they're providing are limited because now they have to spread those funds over a much broader group of people, much larger group of people. So more homeless are coming every day, and a lot of them have jobs.
Thank you, Dorsey. Stephanie, Ms. Jigger, you had something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to lift up the issue of encampments and the blocking of sidewalks. And I do, in our experience in the East Valley, encampments have been one of the real flashpoints of conflict with residents. But we have had a fair bit of success, and I did put a little of information in the chat. We did have some success with our initiatives where we partnered with our lead agency, LA Family Housing, and our little neighborhood organization, our community-based organization, which has a lot of relationships with the people experiencing homelessness, as well as the partners who run the housing. Mm-hmm. We're able to have an impact. We are able to recommend people for housing. So we were able, for example, when a local Project Roomkey site became available, when it opened up, we were able to refer over 30 people that we knew through our drop-in program who lived in a local encampment or 2 local encampments near us. We were able to refer those people, advocate for them, make sure that they got to the hotel and actually got them placed. And they got placed basically as 2 whole encampments. The seniors, the most vulnerable people, we were able to do the kind of relational legwork because we're in the neighborhood. And as a result, those encampments were, people found housing, those encampments are better managed. And instead of just moving people around through sweeps, we actually were able to work together as a neighborhood to find a housing solution for those people living in the encampments. Now, of course, it requires that new housing is being built. It requires a community movement like ours that is willing to build those relationships, both with the people experiencing homelessness and the lead agencies that manage the housing. But I just want to put it out there as a success story, if you will, of a way in which community-based organizations can partner with neighborhood councils and with the city and with the housing leads, the lead agencies, to address this really thorny issue of the encampments. So there are some successes out there that we just feel really strongly that if every neighborhood had an organization like ours, where every 3 to 5 miles we had a neighborhood response to homelessness, working in concert with the city and with the agencies, we would be more effective in positively addressing those flashpoints like encampments that become the focal point of all of the tension in our neighborhood. So anyway, I just wanted to name that, and happy to talk more about that offline.
So Pastor Jigger, a couple people would love to do that. So there have been requests in the chat for you to put your email if you'd be willing.
I did already, but I'm happy to put it again.
If you would put it in again, that would be fantastic. And then I really want to bring back what Ms. Ahmed said about, focusing on even whatever poll you're on, like looking towards the solution of ending homelessness and how then we can get to that. And I really am appreciative of how respectful everybody's been, how people have listened to each other's opinions, and the chat, you're having that space, which I know is not ideal, but to continue those conversations of talking back and forth, and I encourage you to keep doing so. So I wanted to honor our hands that have been raised. If you have just come in, welcome. We're glad you're here. We're looking at the issue of homelessness in LA and trying to bring solutions to the table and find ways that we can all come to those answers that will satisfy the questions that we have, but then also to work towards solutions going forward in these times where we're going to see more and more people falling into homelessness for sure. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Tracy Brown, who, thank you so much for being so patient and waiting for us to turn it over. So go right ahead.
It's a pleasure. Patience is the one thing I have, especially when we're talking about the homeless. I do want to remind everyone, I don't know who said it, Dorsey or Stephanie, you know, homelessness was huge in 2008. People worked and became homeless. COVID is going to make it worse. What is it? 3 million people are out of work throughout the country. So we're really going to have to be really patient and really sensitive. But here's my question. Do we have any, I didn't hear any stats on COVID and the homeless. Where can I find that? And also, what about garbage pickup? Because I have an encampment right across the street from me. Venice is not the only place, but I know Venice has a big problem, but downtown LA has a big problem. Baldwin Hill Basin has a big problem. We all do. But they used to come and help clean up. I just don't see them anymore. And I know that might be COVID related as well in terms of staffing, but I was just wondering where they were at, because we got to help them keep clean too.
All right.
And COVID stats. I haven't heard not one single COVID stats, and I listen to everything the mayor says, you know, and I loved his reporting. I must have missed it.
So I'm going to, thank you so much. I'm going to put in the website. There is, I see that Stephanie has put in an LA Times article on COVID. And then this county of LA also has a website about COVID and what's going on in the county with the homeless. So I'll also try to pop the link into the chat for that as well. And so with that, I had said that we were going to go to Erin Fanning. I know, Erin, you typed some things into the chat as well. And so I don't want to reiterate and give you a chance to speak. And so if you are here, please go ahead. Erin.
Hi, thank you so much. I do want to apologize. I am autistic, doesn't excuse or justify anything, so I apologize for my little upset at the beginning. It's got to be a tremendously hard forum to even try to figure out how to offer. I have a very interesting relationship with neighborhood councils. I got introduced to it by the VP of Venice Neighborhood Council, George Francisco, and Brian Olf, who's on the Homeless Council, trying to defraud me as reporters, okay? And I actually had them, along with Jamie Page, and two people that would then become seated members of the Neighborhood Council, try to actually defraud me and get my power of attorney. I'm housed. I'm autistic, I'm far from dumb. I have a lot of experience with code enforcement. I build all kinds of art monuments. So I do a lot of state facility jobs. So there's a lot of issues that have been ongoing and have been getting concealed for a lot of money getting defrauded. When St. Joseph saw me, they saw me as a good meal ticket because I had my face kicked in and I had an atrophied mouth. So they didn't even bother to figure out what anything was wrong with me. They just checked me off because I was starving. I have to say, the amount of drug use, the amount of active threat inside housing right now with Venice Community Housing, where Carol Sobel is a stakeholder, and they know, and I have documentation with George and a RAND employee discussing with Carol Sobel, knowing that they've watching videos of me getting assaulted and threatened in November. So I do have LAWA trying to charge me actively 42 counts of contempt of court for breaching a stay away order at my own home. So anytime I engage with law enforcement, code enforcement, public health department, HACLA, I get a criminal charge. They're actively filed in court. They try to evict me since October, but Carol's such a limp noodle because she gets away with what she does because of her position in the guild. She auto conflicts anybody out. Well, I have no lawyer. They haven't been able to evict me through the courts where they have no business taking me anyway because I'm in Section 8. But through there, they filed that I'm a threat to the community. They're scared. They just updated the filing in July, and I beat it out yet again, that I'm a threat to their staff, every tenant, and the community. They're scared I'm going to kill somebody. but they don't handle anything or advocate it appropriately. That's that side. Now from our side, oh, right now actively in my building, one of the other tenants is being held in a private facility because he tried to commit suicide. It's not being advocated appropriately. He's been there for 20 years. My unit has been cited as a life threat. It was known to be an illegal unit for 3 years before it killed the last tenant in May of 2018. How they dare have me in there, I have no idea, but it's super cited. And my building 200 Lincoln Boulevard, explain why it's not in case management. The video's there. HCIDLA can't explain it. So as us, we have no advocates because Carol Sobel and LA Can Network, well, they own all the entities, and it's known throughout the county that St. Joseph's and Venice Community Housing are owned by the same agency. So guess what? Everybody's getting defrauded of funding. Even in my own contracts that George Francisco paid for, prove that Stacy Burmaster fulfills her signature and her credentials of VCH on my continuum of care program as a provider and agent for St. Joseph's. So that's where all that land money comes from. That's that's my program money going into speculative units. And that's why you've had in a 13-unit building, 3 successful suicides, an OD meth death in 3 years, oh, and an arson death, the last dude in my unit, that there's no permits, and that everybody knows I'm cited in a life threat and I can't get any help, and I have LAWA charging me for dare reporting. So yeah, no, we definitely some serious issues.
So Mr.
The funny thing is
I want to point out.
All right, go ahead.
That,
sorry, I apologize.
no,
That's
okay.
good enough. No, I appreciate
Don't
it.
apologize at all. I'm really glad that you brought these issues. I'm so sorry to hear of the things that you are going through. Ms. Ahmed did put in that the LA Community Action Network, which is at CANGRESS.org.
Oh, Matt Fisher, an employee of theirs, felony assaulted me July 5th. LAWA tried to pull the case from LAPD and charged me with it. I'm good. Fuck LA Can and Carol Sobel, because LA Can sits on the board of directors for every agency, including Legal Aid Foundation, Self-Help.
Well,
what do you
Mr.
want?
Fanning,
I conflict out with everybody.
They're not here right now. So if for the people that are here, and if they were, I would ask them to answer you. And
yeah, that'd be awesome. They can anyone that want to try from LA Can. Anybody from LA Can, St. Joseph's, Venice Neighborhood Council, Mike Bonin's office. Let's rock. I have it super well documented.
All right, we're not here.
Now
so
it's here. I appreciate your time. I'm good enough. That's good. I appreciate it. I got my opportunity to speak. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And from there, I want to turn it over to Peter Hatterline. Peter, did you want to add to the conversation?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, hello. My name is Peter Hatterline, and I am the chair of the Homelessness Committee in NoHo. I'm on the NoHo Neighborhood Council. And I wanted to circle back on a comment that was made previous about different types of housing options, given that the permanent supporting and bridge housing options are very expensive because of the wraparound services. Are there other alternatives? And I would really like to uplift the notion that we need to be looking at a lot of different housing options. There isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. A quote that I really have taken to heart is that if you've met one unhoused person, you've met one unhoused person. That's just one person, individual experiences. Everybody is different. Everybody has different needs. And if we stop treating people as a they, as an other, as a larger group, and we recognize that we need a lot of different options, then I think we're going to be a lot more successful. And this really requires a lot of buy-in at the local level. We've tried a lot of different things at the city and county level. We've tried to get landlords to accept people who are getting rental assistance from Prop H funds. We've tried building shelters in a variety of different flavors, from bridge housing to permanent supportive housing to what you might consider a more traditional quote unquote homeless shelter like we have up at Hope of the Valley in the East San Fernando Valley. But we're also looking at a sort of tiny home model. This is a new idea in North Hollywood. Councilmember Krikorian's office is trying to start a new pilot project where we will have, they kind of look like tiny homes. The company that makes them is called Pallet Shelter. Imagine, like a one room with a bed and a shelf, and they're contained and they're in their own area with mobile showers and meals and security and a privacy fence. And we're going to try that in NoHo next year. There's going to be 2 sites, and there are about 50 to 60 of these tiny little homes. And that is not a solution that will work for everyone. Some people are really going to need supportive housing with on-site social workers, right? Or help with substance abuse or mental health issues. Some people, they just need a leg up, and they just need some extra rental assistance so they can get one of the apartments in LA. And so I'm really encouraging people across LA to look at a variety of solutions. Project Home Key now, we're trying to get motel rooms and hotel rooms to open up. The city and state, I've spoken with elected officials, they're looking for property that's owned by the state and by the city that they can convert into new housing. But it requires buy-in at every level, and it requires creative solutions, not just an overarching quick fix. There is none. There is no quick fix. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. And people have requested that you put your contact information into the chat if you'd be willing to do that. I see that Tom Booth also put in pallet shelters. So if you haven't looked into pallet shelters, that might be another link of something that you might want to take a look at. And that's also in the chat as a link. And so with that, Tony Wilkinson. Tony, did you have something you wanted to bring to the table?
Yes, actually it's on that housing thing. And I don't know if, I'm from Panorama City. Yes, it is low income, it's diverse, but we have, in the Panorama City Neighborhood Council, we supported a county funded low income housing project, and we had engaged the community, and they came in and said, can you make it bigger? So we said, sure. So it went from 100 and some units to almost 200 units. This is right next to, exactly next to, a beautiful new market rate 5-story big housing project. We also have across, down this block and across the street, the old Assistance League building, which is going to again be low income, all low income housing. We have another one, we won't say where it is, but it's a project for women who are escaping domestic violence and their kids. We haven't had any pushback against this. And one of the things that we need to realize, particularly with the pandemic, is that a lot of, well, first of all, lots of homeless are generally in the area where they were originally housed. So our unhoused neighbors have always been our neighbors in many cases. Number two, with what's going on in the evictions that we're looking at, many of our existing housed neighbors are going to become just these people. So frankly, this is a, or should be, a fight, because there's not enough low-income housing around, to get the low-income housing in our neighborhoods. We're trying to do this in Panorama City, and I see neighborhoods that fight it tooth and nail. This is insane. That's exactly the backwards thing. We should be trying to get it. So it's just an expression of frustration, but I wanted to, you know, side in with NoHo and say, yeah, we need to work on the housing issue.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkinson. We really appreciate your passion and your advocacy and your work. Ms. O'Neill, is it possible for you to answer Ms. Ahmed's question she has about whether the pallet shelter housing would be considered ADU? And would there be any issues around that with the city?
You know, so for the city, so we're building, I think it's 3 so far, pallet shelter projects. They're still in the works though. So they're part of the, there's a litigation, we call it the LA Alliance litigation. It has several different parties in it. Part of that litigation is an agreement between the city and county about building, the city paying for building 6,700 new, it could be beds, it could be safe parking spots. Part of that, some of the council members are exploring pallet shelters using the pallet shelter company. So when the city does a project like that in its own city-owned land, the zoning issues aren't the same. So if a private group wanted to do that, or wanted to build an ADU on private property, they would have to look at the zone they're in and talk to planning about what can be done on that particular piece of property.
And I did also want to add on to that, Tom Booth did post saying that the pallet shelters are being considered by council districts as a response to the Judge Carter ruling. That is,
So,
also going on.
And I'm sorry, I have to go in 1 minute. I just want to add that, so I think the infamy of Judge Carter is far and wide. He's a very interesting person, and the litigation is quite interesting. But there is not an injunction in that case. He did have an injunction probably maybe in March or so. That injunction was vacated. That litigation is ongoing, and it's between the plaintiffs from the LA Alliance case, the interveners who represent LA CAN and some of the more traditional activist groups like K-Town for All. So it's a lot of different parties suing the city and the county. On one hand, one group is saying that the city does too much, we clean too much, we are unfair to the unhoused, and then another group saying we don't do enough, we're not fair to the residents and business owners, and so that's where the litigation is, but it's ongoing. So even though you may hear about an injunction or you may hear about this or that so far, the only thing out of that is a city and county agreement so far.
All right, thank you very much for bringing that answer back to us. And so I do see Ida Abkarians has her hand raised. Ida is the co-chair for the Homelessness Committee in West Hills Neighborhood Council and is also a member of WAVNA. And so Ida, take it away.
Hi Olivia, hi everybody. Nice to see everyone today. I just had a suggestion. Since Ron Galprin is so dedicated to help the homeless and protect the HHH funds, it would be nice if all the neighborhood councils can have a representative that can sit in different meetings with him and help him through that, because we really need to have a voice with him. So if we can do that, that would really help us. Also, I think we should also concentrate. There are lots of Motel 6s, lots of motels and hotels that are just sitting empty. If we can convert those into shelters, and which I know some are doing it, that would be a much better option. Then we don't have to spend $700,000 on each unit. Thank you.
All right, and I think that there's definitely a lot to be talked about there. Thank you very much for bringing the issue and bringing Mr. Galprin into it. He did just release his study about the cost of the building, which I think was already brought up here. So something to consider and looking at other solutions that aren't as costly. Mr. Walker, Andre, I saw you had your hand up before. You put it down. Did you still want to speak?
Yes, I'm sorry if I did put it down. I didn't mean to. I guess for me,
Mr. Walker, I think you went out. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. I moved here from North Carolina in July 2005, and homelessness was an issue then. And my concern is the sense of urgency in this city as it relates to this issue. It just doesn't seem like there is that much of a sense of urgency in movement, in finding resources, in collaborating. It just doesn't seem like there's that much of a sense of urgency, which kind of concerns me, which really concerns me actually. I wanted to basically echo what Noreen was saying as far as collaborating, us coming together, you know, the homelessness liaisons. I know there's a homelessness liaison meeting on Wednesday, I believe it is. But I just don't see, you know, from the advocates, from homelessness liaisons, I just don't see the coming together, the really kind of joining of forces on a regular, consistent basis. And I think that needs to be something that we're striving to make happen, come together regularly and address some of these issues. Everybody has a solution. Everybody has a way that we can combat this. But, you know, if you have different factions that are coming up with different solutions, but we're all not like coming together in some kind of town hall forum or something to that effect. I mean, obviously we can't do that because of COVID, but there just needs to be more unity when it comes to addressing this issue and coming up with one kind of initiative that has maybe tiers and has layers and has steps that we can all follow, that we can all kind of move together at the same pace, so that we're all pretty much on one accord. And I'd like to see that happen a little bit more. There was one other thing I wanted to say. And I'm not really sure the status of Project Room Key. I was actually, I'm on the North Hills East Neighborhood Council, and I'm the homelessness liaison there. And I actually was very successful in getting a 70-year-old woman now. She was 69 when I started working with her. She was posted up in front of the Bank of America, and she was panhandling to get $80 to stay in a motel that was in the area. I had been giving her money when I moved into the area, and finally I said, let me just stop and talk to this woman and find out what her story is. She's in a motorized wheelchair. She's been sexually assaulted. She's been set on fire. She's been hit by vehicles, and I was very successful in getting her off of the streets. It was a fight. I didn't get a lot of help from LASA. I didn't get a lot of help from Hope of the Valley, which is specifically designed to help homeless people. They actually didn't return my phone calls. They didn't return emails. So I took it on myself to get this 70-year-old woman into a Project Room Key room. She's there now. She's been there for about 4 months now. So I'm doing everything I can in my power, just as an individual, to make sure that I'm doing my part. But yeah, I just as an overall arching kind of theme, I think we need to be on the same accord. I think we need to have like a structured, tiered plan of action so that we can all be on the same page and move forward together.
Thank you, Mr. Walker, so much for your words. I did want to put into the chat, I know, Andre, that you mentioned that you are the homelessness liaison with the city and with LASA, and I put that back into the chat. And so if you missed it the first time around, I know that they had put in, if you are interested, if your neighborhood council, if you serve on one and you don't have a homelessness liaison, you could step up to be that person. And so I just put that back in the chat, and you can reach out to Jackie Kim, and then that is something that you could do. I'm going to come, Tom Booth had raised a question in the chat, but before I do, I see Lisa Scott has her hand up, and so I wanted to give her an opportunity to speak. Lisa.
Hi, thank you. I'm on the East Hollywood Neighborhood Council, and I've heard so much good stuff today. I really appreciate everybody's participation. And I just kind of wanted to amplify some of the things, particularly, you know, the notion of not, that we need to really walk away from the stereotypes. And so let me just tell you briefly my personal experience, which was that almost 2 years ago, the apartment building that I had lived in for 21 years, happily, was sold. And they immediately raised everyone's rent. In my case, it went up 97%. I had 60 days to, you know, move or pay. You know, I didn't want to move because I'd been there 21 years. And boy, talk about, you know, do you have 21 years worth of stuff sitting there that you have to figure out what to do with it? So it was really traumatic. And and then, you know, the story gets even better from the sense of understanding homelessness and the housing crisis. What I experienced in the next 18 months before I finally found this place that I'm sitting in right now was horrific. And I didn't realize I was going to have so much trouble. For me and for many, many others I know, I mean, we were displaced, okay? You know, we were housed, and then we were displaced. And personally, in my problem, my situation, and so many others that I know personally, so these are anecdotes, but I know these people, we just don't make enough money to afford the housing. You know, that's our problem. And so, you know, I just want to throw that into the mix that a lot of people that you see may very well have been displaced, or, oh, in my case, you know, I do want to say that I'm just really fortunate because I had family resources that could help me through that really rough 18 months. and helped me to get, you know, rehoused. But if I had not had, and I used to think about this a lot, you know, what if my kids weren't there to help me? I don't know. I guess that's some of the people I see. That's probably their story. The other thing I just want to throw out is the idea that, you know, we, people with mental challenges, mental health challenges and drug addiction, a lot of them are housed. So the idea that, you know, everyone who's unhoused, that it was caused by mental health challenges or drug addiction just doesn't make sense. Is that are those things a factor? Sure, but it's not the reason that they're homeless, or to make that assumption, I think just puts us on the wrong path. So I just wanted to throw all that out there and share my experience and throw the word displaced into the mix. And that's it. Thank you.
Dorothy, you had something to say?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. Publicly, I've not discussed this, but I myself have been recently rehoused. I've spent a homeless time for almost a year. This past year, I was able to get back into housing through the grace of God and all of the amazing people that helped me. But the one thing that I can say about being homeless is there's such a stigma about it. I mentioned that earlier about being homeless. And the point is today, anyone can be homeless. Never in my life did I ever think I would experience homelessness. But I can tell you that from listening to Mr. Walker and how he had to fight to help this neighbor, and organizations are there to help her, he had to struggle to get her help. Well, it takes that kind of serious focus and determination in order to navigate yourself through the system. There are a lot of lists to get on. Thousands and thousands of people are on these lists for housing. It's just not there. But it is also, when you're sitting in these offices, county offices, and you're waiting for hours and hours and hours, and then you're told you have to come back tomorrow, and you're like, well, wait a minute, you know, I've just spent this whole day here. What are you talking about? You call on the phone. You can't get anyone on the phone that can give you an answer or respond in a time. Sometimes you get through and then they tell you, well, you have to talk to somebody else. I mean, there are so many things in this system. When you talk about urgency, the only person that has the urgency and has to do something is the person that finds themselves homeless. And when the systems that are there to help you really are not helping you. People are starving. You tell them, come back next month? How do you do that? How do you do that in all conscience with this city, this country? This is a national phenomenon here. And we do have the power to do something about it. Every single person has something that they can do about it. Every time I drive by someone that's in a tent, and I see them with their children, and you know, fathers, it's killing them inside to not be able to provide food, clothing, and housing. That's basic necessity of life. This is criminal.
Yes.
Absolutely criminal. And people who are in office, do your job. What is your job? Why did we put you there? We have to get these kids that are on the street marching to become part of these neighborhood councils, to learn the way to get through the system and to become policymakers.
Yes.
We need them to be educated. And everything about this system is telling the person that's homeless, it's your fault. Oh, please. It is not their fault. The system is designed for you to fail. Privatizing education, privatizing the penal system. What does that mean? You have someone that has absolutely no interest in helping people in a position to control their lives. There is real urgency here. This country has gone down the tubes in the last 4 years. It's been worse than it has ever been in, well, certainly in my lifetime. I'm 75. And for me to find myself in this position at this age, I was like, you know, well, what do I do? Do I cry and say, oh, I feel sorry for myself? Believe me, you cannot waste a moment on thinking about, oh, woe is me. You have to use everything in your being to fight the system that's there to help you. So that's my 2 cents.
That's the kind of fire we need. That's the kind of fire we need and passion that we need in this issue. And
So
moving forward.
to put it together then, Andre, this is the thing, right? That's why we're here. Yeah. And so it is action. If you are going to take on things that are anti-racist, if you're going to take on things that are anti-poverty, if you're going to take on things, then it's what have you achieved and what have you actually gotten done, right? To move it towards that, right? And so the protests are, I think, are incredibly important. It's the action then that they inspire to advocate for policy that then changes it. Nothing, you know, you can't change people's hearts and minds. Policy is something that is possible, and neighborhood councils are here to influence that power, like you're saying, Dorsey, about people who are in the positions of power to make change, to advocate, to push, to continue to find solutions, and then amplify and speak to those things. And so I think first I want to just say to Lisa, thank you so much for sharing your story, and to Dorsey for having the courage to bring those things here, because that's exactly why we're here. I saw that Tom Booth put in the chat, is then a right to housing, as they have in New York rather, is that then the solution where you have to provide housing, right? LA does not have that here. And I want to just honor CJ Cole did have a hand up. And so I wanted to give CJ as the last hand up, and then to open it up for people to be able to discuss, because that was the last hand that we had raised. So CJ, did you have something?
Yes, I'm actually on the Homeless Committee, the Board of Directors, and the Administrative Committee of the Venice Neighborhood Council. And I logged in a little bit late, but our problem seems to be a lot different from what I'm hearing of the people speaking. Our problem is predominantly people who are not originally from Venice. Very many of them, probably over 50%, are not even from California. They have mental problems, they have drug problems. We have a very, very small few people who are really the truly old homeless that we've had for years. And either they have been found a place to live or they don't want a place to live. But we have a problem where, you know, we are representing a community where I would say at least 80% of the people who live here really don't want all of the encampments. And the city has to address the mental problems and, you know, and the drug abuse problems, and they are not solved by housing. We can't keep our people in our bridge housing because they don't want to have to behave. They last a few days and off they go. We have like 20% of the beds that are open because they can't keep people in. You know, I think there's just different areas that have different problems. And it's not that we don't care about those that are truly homeless because they were in our neighborhood and they lost their job or they can't afford something. We are just inundated, absolutely inundated by filthy drug-related people. And, you know, I live across the street from some. I mean, it's horrific. And it's just scary. I can't even walk my dog now. You know, it gets dark so early. I'm scared to death to walk my dog because these guys are violent.
So Ms. Cole, thank you so much. You know,
we just don't like you, CJ.
The key is in there that I think that you said people. And so whether you're truly homeless, whether you're drug addicted, you're mentally ill, or if you have fallen into it because you haven't a job, you still are unhoused. And
but housing does not solve that.
And it kind of does.
CJ, you actually have the contract. You got them in February with Mark. So, hey, CJ, you got the contracts that prove that that Stacy Burmaster and VCH have been defrauding Fed funding. So I wouldn't cry too much.
I'd love to get rid of VCHC. You know,
Yes, you did. You got it with sitting right behind me at Mark when I was speaking at the VCH Neighborhood Council. February. You guys could play up the video. CJ, you know me very well. I've come to how many of the morning meetings? How many times have you tried to suggest that I need to take on a second provider when I already have St. Joseph's, and you know that St. Joseph's and Venice Community Housing are owned by the same entities? So go away with your little Yenta shit.
Homeless services are owned by our little boy.
Shit, CJ.
Okay,
for real.
Mr. Fanning and Ms. Cole, thank you both. I can see that there's a long history here that we don't know all the facts that have gone in, but I appreciate you bringing your issues, and please feel free to put them in the chat. I wanted to bring it back to the conversations and the questions that were brought. So there were two that were elevated. Mr. Booth asked about having a right to shelter. New York has this program, Los Angeles does not. Is that an area to go? And then Noreen did say, how then do we take other programs, right? The city has like little silos. They have solutions then, and every silo is doing their own thing, and nobody's working in a cohesive manner. Everyone's got their little fiefdom, and they hang on to the power, and the solutions then aren't looked at in a more innovative, integrated way. So then how do we as community members, how do we as neighborhood council members, how do we then push for those solutions to look at things more holistically and to include housing in that? Because housing does solve homelessness. It does. With services, perhaps it is something that's there. So how do we bring those different things together? And with that, I open up the floor. There's no one who has a hand raised. So if you want to unmute yourself and just go ahead, talk. We're good. We got 40 minutes. So please feel free to unmute yourself and then.
Well, I'd like to say that I don't think one has to walk into fire to know that it burns. So if you can just simply imagine yourself in that place of being homeless, or even the threat of it, it's a very frightening place to be. And so once you find yourself actually in that situation, and we have a problem coming now because we have so many more people that are going to be out there. So to me, we need to get out in front of it. We need to start preparing people for what they need to do and how they can do it to help themselves. Because we've learned, there is no knight in shining armor that's coming to rescue us. We are the ones that are going to have to do the rescuing. The federal government isn't doing their job. And it is up to us in the individual neighborhoods. And every neighborhood is different. So you do have to get together and talk about the issues that you're facing and how you can help to alleviate them, or at least be that step where your neighbors can come and say, hey, I need help with this. And you have materials that either you hand them, you can help them, or you can introduce them to your partners. You need to partner with these organizations that help in your neighborhood. You need to know who they are. And it can't just be for the group that's in there now. It has to be something set up so that if the new board members that come in recognize that this neighborhood has this problem, and this is how we're addressing it, or if changes need to be made because things improve, then you can change it. But I think it is down to the individual neighborhoods understanding how they can connect with the services that can help their community.
So Pastor Jager did want to add on. I did really quickly want to, someone had said in the chat privately that they maybe didn't feel comfortable sharing themselves. They did say, use what is in our hands to fulfill what's in our hearts. What existing programs show effectiveness and efficiency? And then think of bio-individualism. There is no one-size-fits-all program, to each his own. Thus, comprehensive assessment is essential. In this assessment, tools like stages of change may help facilitate an individual towards their, not ours, goals and dreams. Operative word, facilitate. Stages of change: pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance. Encourage autonomy. Teach the fish approach. I think that's, Dorsey, what you were just kind of alluding to. Educate the public, evaluate the outcome of a program. Knowledge is power. More data can help us develop an effective program. Follow-up care, include environmental therapy and cognitive behavior therapy. So I did want to just bring that. That person did feel comfortable sharing. So thank you for bringing that. And Stephanie.
I was not going to build on what Dorsey said. Is it all right if I
no, go.
want to respond or engage?
No, just talk.
Okay. I just wanted to lift up something that had come up in the conversations, but we haven't addressed, I don't think that fully, is the issue of services for persons with mental health and substance use disorder, which I think it's important that we name that, particularly on the substance use side or the dual diagnosis side, where you have both substance use and mental health concerns. We simply do not have enough resources. We are under capacity, just grossly under capacity, and particularly in the San Fernando Valley. The West Side is a little bit more, but I think that one of the things that I would like to see, and maybe this is something that the homeless liaisons or the neighborhood councils who are interested in it could really help and work together to try to bring more resources into their areas, not necessarily into just their neighborhood council area, but just, for example, East San Fernando Valley. We're just mounting an initiative to try to work together with our elected officials as well as others who are interested in trying to bring or develop a dual diagnosis, more dual diagnosis beds in the East San Fernando Valley. And there are all kinds of ways to do that. It can be public health. It could be a nonprofit model like Step Up on Second, which we have on the West Side and in Hollywood, which I've seen to be really effective. But I do think that as we begin to parse out the issue of homelessness and really try to address the individual needs that people have, that one need that we are not meeting and we're not set up to meet yet is particularly around dual diagnosis. And so again, I just want to lift up if there are other people who would like to work on that and see how can we bring those resources into our communities. I think a collective effort, even in the face of financial shortages, a collective effort would be would be useful. We can work with partners together. So I just throw that out. I would love to create more dual diagnosis beds in our East San Fernando Valley, but if the West Side or West Valley or other parts of the city, just let me know and maybe we can hold some meetings together with some of the leaders who've done this work really well.
Helen and Andre, you both had your hands up. You can just go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to why we, and again, this goes back to the sense of urgency. We've got an epidemic here, and we've had it for a while. So why is there not a right to shelter law? If it's that much of an issue and if it's that important to us, which it is, why aren't we, we're not going to stop the influx of homelessness. Obviously, there are homeless individuals. There are homeless individuals, as somebody else mentioned, that are coming in from other states. We can't stop that right now. But what we can do is we can work with what we've got. And again, going back to the sense of urgency, why do we not have a right to shelter law? Why not? It just doesn't make sense. I don't get it.
Well, I think one of the reasons that we don't really have it here might have to do with the weather. When you're on the East Coast, you have freezing winters, and which when you have people who are homeless, then you're creating a really serious problem if they don't have somewhere to be. So I think that might be one of the reasons that they have it there and we don't. But the other reason is that no one has pushed it through or tried to push it through that I can think of. I don't recall ever hearing about that. But it doesn't mean that one person couldn't start that, Mr. Walker.
I'd like to agree with Mr. Walker that there's not a sense of urgency. And I do think that's partly because the narrative is being driven by service providers who are frankly, profiting quite well off of all this money that we're putting into homelessness and seeing no results.
Exactly.
I'm a Venice resident. I have reached my breaking point on any empathy level because we are invaded by people who are arriving here from out of state. And a lot of them have mental illness and drug issues. And we aren't providing the services for those people. Saying that you're going to give your housing and you don't have to be sober makes no sense. You can't get people who are mentally ill, and we have no laws that can take them off the street, basically. We've allowed that to be an option. At some point, if you're mentally ill, you aren't rational enough to decide that you don't want to live on the street in a tent in the middle of filth and hoarding all this garbage around you.
I literally document that there are no workers for St. Joseph. I have no workers.
And we need to, we have to, there's two types of homeless. There's the homeless people who are out of luck, down on their luck, have lost a job. These people are not interested in living on the streets permanently. And then we have these other group that couldn't care, in a way they don't mind being on the street because they don't want any rules in their life. They don't want to get sober. They need to be on medication. They need to be under medical supervision. And we're talking social workers. This isn't going to work in the long run. And that's what we have in Venice right now. We've got fires being set almost daily in these encampments. Sooner or later, something's going to catch on fire and they won't put it out fast enough. We have, people being stabbed in homeless encampments. There's a lot of violence going on. This is wrong on all levels, and there does need to be a sense of urgency. And I totally agree with Mr. Walker on this. And we need to just put a stop to what we're doing that isn't working and fix the problem instead of pretending housing is going to
missing a
solve it.
whole different demographic. Those of us that want services that don't exist, that are enrolled. That's a problem.
Yeah, I would agree too. People aren't getting.
Well, how come you don't want the documentation that George, not all of us are mentally ill and some of us need other services that we're contracted for, that St. Joseph's is defrauding the public and us. Our money's getting diverted into Venice Community Housing's hands for land buys. It's contractually proven. Literally, I have the contract.
I agree.
And I'm enrolled and I'm suffering and I'm getting accused of everything that I get accused of for daring to report because my interest was in the community. My interest was in the community first because without the community being able to even sustain, no, you guys could never afford to give us an opportunity. I grew up in the Palisades. I lived my homeless time in industrial areas. I was brought there by St. Joseph's. They brought me through 4 venues. Okay, City of Santa Monica got me that apartment, but you guys have no clue. And by continuing to ignore that everybody's talking only about the drug addicts and the thieves, guess what? We're also the ones that are getting taken advantage of that. And no one's even making it, hey, while they're saying it has to be housing first. What about and I'm not even talking me. I've always stated, I don't understand why I'm housed. I don't think I deserve that. I would like access to services so I could become a contributing member of society again. I have PTSD, I'm autistic. I don't have family. So it's difficult to get back on your feet unless you're all the way down in the gutter. Now, because we don't, why are these housings 236 units in Venice? In my building, there's 3 empty ones. But how come those aren't going first to elderly and disabled people? The ones, because the program management money is not there. And that's why there's a conflict of interest with my contracts alone, and especially with the county and city knowing that St. Joseph's and Venice Community Housing are owned by the same entities. It's bad because this is why they have open beds. Venice is as bad as it is because they use it as an open lobby. They literally are trying to find the craziest people statistically that they think they can manage without any program management. And then the rest get let loose in the town. Like literally my contract proves. And if you look at the public audit, St. Joseph's in 2018 only had $1 million salary budget. How are they a countywide agency providing any services? What, 50 people at 20 racks a year? And then you look at Venice Community Housing. They have 236 apartments. How'd they have a $32 million budget? $9 million net positive after a $4.5 million speculatory buy on a commercial piece of property before they drafted AB 1197 that would allow them to convert. Now, again, if you look in the chat, I've already proven in November, the bridge housing has no valid permits. That's why LAWA is after me. I have LADBS acknowledging that LAWA and Metro defrauded an extra $10 million, and contractually they could never build it because it's a state essential services facility, and all of these classify as that. So it's a different level of permitting, and also it's supposed to run through there so we don't pay these ridiculously exorbitant overrun costs. They can't do owner builder.
I think that this is definitely something that you are bringing up, or questions that have been raised, and I know Ms.
That's why literally LAWA is after me. LAWA is super, super after me. I have literally, so what's going on is everybody's known that I've had crazy charges after me. I have 42 counts. They're trying to tell me I was breaking a restraining order. I have, the city attorney has issued a stay away order from me that's to my own home, but they don't say that I live there. So every time I engage with LAPD or code enforcement or report anything about Carol Sobel or LA CAN Network or Venice Community Housing, if I deal with public health, if I deal with HCIDLA, if I deal with the Housing Authority, or, you know what I'm saying, or LADBS, I catch a criminal charge. I reported my bicycle being stolen from the property. I'm getting a charge for a stay away order. So I've gotten assaulted repeatedly. Even me getting assaulted, I catch a charge because they won't even look at the case. I'm allegedly not supposed to be in the area, but everybody knows I live there. They tried to do
Aaron, can I interject something? Because you brought up St. Joseph.
And then we're going to try to honor the next person.
I appreciate it, Helen.
Can I just correct something? St. Joseph's, you talked about $1 million in salary. That actually is their executive members' salary, because I've looked at their tax returns. They take in $20 million from the state, and they're paying almost $1 million in salary to their top 6 officers. This is the problem with the money that we're putting into homelessness. It is going to fund charities, charities that supposedly are helping the homeless, but we're paying exorbitant overhead for this, for them to have this privilege. And that has to be fixed. And I urge everybody on this panel, take a look at the charity registry that the California Department, the Attorney General has, and check out these organizations before you decide that, oh, this is who is really going to help the homeless, and look at how they're spending their money. Because in some cases, I think it's almost.
I wasn't wrong. That was in 2018.
Anyway, so I'm gonna let somebody else speak.
Okay, so I'm gonna go. I just wanted to bring back that Noreen Andre, that she had put into the chat, that she said that she thinks the issue of trying to push people in shelters during COVID-19, like the rec centers where cases of COVID did come up. If we create a mandate for shelter, it has to be to create the shelters, but not to coerce people into them. If there are policies we agree should change, we also love to brainstorm the best way to push them for collaboration. And I think that the misspending of money that you're talking about, that Dorsey has alluded to in terms of like the bureaucracy, that it is then pushed back on the people, right? Who then are told that they are the ones who are at fault and need to fix it. I think these are all the same things that we're hearing in the misappropriation of funds, et cetera. So Aida, did you want to speak to about any of that, or is there something else you wanted to elevate? And then Andre, I see your hand after that.
I wanted to say that when Aaron talks, when Andre talks, I really listened, and I thank you guys for really helping us understand what's going on. However, I still think if we want to see a change, we should all stand up, and instead of fighting amongst, we can talk about these until next year's same event, and we can all get together. But what we need to do is to make a commitment today that each and every one of us is going to go and talk to whomever that we see that is a public figure and tell them what's going on, and keep them accountable to what's happening. And also, I'm still going after the HHH money. That was our tax money. It was supposed to go to our homeless friends, and it's not. And before a little bit of it that is left goes to waste and goes to salaries and just filling other people's pockets, I think we should all stand up for that and fight and help Ron Galprin, that is trying so hard to get some of that money back for us. So that's just my opinion. If all the neighborhood councils could band in together and we can make a commitment that we are all going to fight with this. One cannot win. We can all win together. Thank you.
And I put my email into the chat. I'm happy if you want to either send it back to me, your email or your contact information. I'll put my number in there too. You can text me and I'm happy to, facilitate that. So people can get on a list so that beyond today, you're able to continue to push, to advocate, to raise those things, to share those resources, to bring those, because it is like lifting a 500 ton weight. It is so heavy that until it is everybody underneath there and lifting together and pushing in the same direction, right? Because if we're all in the boat and everyone's pushing on one side or other of the boat's going nowhere. Then we're just rowing in circles, and that's what we've been doing for years, and it's time. So everyone's got to start to pull the same together. Like I've never rowed crew. I don't even know what that is, but everybody's got to be rowing like the same direction and saying pull and pull and breathe and pull, because otherwise then we are not doing what we need to do. And Andre, you are next up.
I agree with Ida, and thank you so much for that, Ida.
Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely do think that we do need to pull Ron into the picture and use him more frequently. I think overall, because when we talk about homelessness, we talk about there's so many different facets to it, right? And I think that if the homelessness liaisons can come together, again, we do have a meeting, I believe, that's coming up on Wednesday, but yes. I think we need to take all of the facets of homelessness and if we can steer our efforts and our energy into attacking those facets, if we have different categories, and then you say, okay, what are the steps that we need to accomplish in order to address these different facets? Because there's so many levels to it. It's overwhelming us as far as to, okay, where do we start? Is the chicken and the egg? What comes first? And I think if we can all come together in a consortium and put all these facets on a board and say, okay, what do we all agree on is the first step to address mental illness? What is the first step to address substance abuse, and tackle it that way? Because it just feels like a scattered effort, and we're not, there's not a lot of cohesiveness.
True, thank you. Absolutely right, thank you.
And one thing I'd like to add on to that is just that, I teach leadership at my school and high school, and they have the ASBs, the student leaders from every high school, come 5 times a year to meet as a group, right? And they take those brilliant minds of young people, they put them in a room and they talk at them for 2 hours, telling them what they need to do for them. You need to bring this program back to the school, and here's a handout that you need to publicize, and here is our priority, and you need to be the mouthpiece to make sure that that's communicated. They do not ever ask them, what do you need? What do you think? Right? And then what do you think of possible solutions? If you're training young leaders to be the leaders, then why don't you ever give them a chance to lead? And if we have homeless liaisons that are here to liaison, then why, when you go to the homeless liaison meeting, is it a one-way informational session where information is transferred and told this is what the city is doing when it's not working? So then I think the group of the homeless liaisons and the people that have homelessness committees and the people that have a voice then start to make it a two-way street. This is what we see, this is what we need, and we are unified and pushing for that action, and then bring back data that shows whether it's working or not. And if not, then we will refine and we will adjust and we will pivot and be nimble, not slow and bureaucratic, so that people a month later, Dorsey, are coming back saying, just go for a month and come back next month when you don't have food or you don't have a roof over your head and it's, what was it here, 122 degrees outside in West Hills, right? True. So with that, if there isn't anyone who has something else to elevate or something to bring to the table, if you haven't had a chance to speak, maybe you're just more shy to say something, that's all right. It's okay. We want to hear what you have to say. And, all viewpoints are welcome. If you can bring it, like I said, the direction of pulling together, we want to hear your voice if we haven't. And Noreen, I see you have your hand up, so go right ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, really quickly, I was also just going to add to that is another piece for these meetings is how do we figure out how to get more direct voices? And I love that we have got to hear somebody who's experienced homelessness talk in this group right now. Thank you for sharing that. But I would love if there was more representation and we figured out how to get that into these neighborhood councils. And it seems like something that would be a little bit long-term, like this kind of goal, but I think it's something that we need to think about in the immediate, because unless those voices aren't a part of this, then we're not going to figure out those solutions in a way that's actually really addressing the concerns of these community members. So yeah, if there's another step is just how do we get more voices into neighborhood councils?
Thank you. Sandy?
Hey there. Just real quick, my name is Sandy Burdette. I'm a pastor in downtown LA. Anyway, I moved here 4 months ago, sold my house and came to LA to help in outreach in Hollywood. I just felt led there. Well, literally just load up a basket, a wagon with shoes and socks and underwear and water and just walk the streets of Hollywood and try to connect with the people.
Wow. Where did you come from, Sandy?
West Virginia.
Oh my goodness. Oh my
So I love that we have this opportunity to connect. I just would love to know how I can become more involved in what you all are doing for the Hollywood area.
Is there anyone here from Hollywood that could speak to that? Anyone from another part of the city that has any ideas or resources?
Could I just throw out a group that I'm a part of that does a lot of work there? Street Watch LA. They're connected with a DSA, which is that focus on socialism, but this group doesn't have any kind of affiliation to it. But they work in all different neighborhoods, and they have a Hollywood chapter as well. So if you want, I can send you the link for their website. And
any other resources?
PATH is an organization that I worked with, and they are fantastic. Let me see if I can find a link to them and put it in the chat.
Yeah, if you want other resources, just put a web address and you can just copy it into the chat.
Awesome.
So that people have that.
Also, you know, I haven't had very good luck with being able to get people connected to a shelter, people connected to resources. At home, we have HUD, which here I believe is Section 8. And I looked that up and it's like closed down completely. There's absolutely zero. You can't even apply right now. So it's overwhelming to say the least.
It is overwhelming, and when you do dial, like LA Hop is the official, city line, that if you call into LA Hop, then that'll get people started and get them in the coordinated entry system. But there's nothing really available. So, even if you call that number, it's not very, useful.
Effective.
Right. And so I see that PATH is located in Rampart Village, and thank you very much for putting that in. If anyone else has any resources, put them in. Go ahead, Dorsey.
No, I was looking for it, but someone put it up, so great. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for coming. We really appreciate you being here and all the hard work that you're doing in the East Valley, and I really hope you reach out to me. I would love to coordinate with you. And did you want to say anything closing before you had to go?
No, thank you everyone for your great ideas and sharing and your engagement and energy, and together we can make a difference.
Andrew, we connected via email, and my apologies. It was like towards the end of July, I believe. So I did want to say thank you for reaching out to me, and I definitely look forward to communicating with you in the future.
And thank you. And I need to apologize for you. I got busy and somehow we connected, and then
exactly.
So we will reconnect.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Okay, great.
And I did just want to thank you so much, Andrew. We're so glad you could be here. As we close down, I wanted to know, Tom Booth, are you still here? Did you have anything you wanted to add? Or Pat?
Yeah, so no, I appreciate the conversation. And I think that maybe the takeaway is that we need to increase our sense of urgency and dealing with this issue, and maybe trying to find ways of putting pressure where it needs to go. And I also think a collaborative effort as well. It's kind of hard to do this alone while you're fighting somebody else. I mean, the idea is to create some solutions. And just to kind of mention that I'm also West Hills Neighborhood Council with Olivia. Great job today, Olivia, coordinating all this. What an amazing job you did. And also West Valley Neighborhood Alliance on Homelessness. That's a larger alliance in the West Valley that we started a few years ago, realizing that with numbers there's strength. And so that was one of the things that we started, as Andrew had mentioned earlier, from the East Valley. Also, I'm a mental health clinician and substance use clinician as well with the LA County Department of Mental Health, licensed clinical social worker. And a lot of the comments about substance use and mental health, I'm listening to very carefully. It's such a complicated issue. The problem is the dikes have busted, or the river banks have broken down, and it's a complete flood right now. So most service agencies are just completely overwhelmed. And as we continue to kind of idly go by these processes of solution, the problem just gets worse and more intense. And mental health and substance use disorders are both progressive illnesses. And so they just get worse. So the longer people languish on the street, the worse their problems get and the more difficult they are to solve. So, again, doubling down on sense of urgency and what we can do right away is something that I would really like to help support this group. And hopefully we can coordinate efforts across the city and do more of this work together in a kind of a coordinated way. And again, thanks everybody for coming out today. It was just really informative and really great to hear from everybody. Thank you.
And I think with that, Dorsey, did you have anything that you wanted to add on for our closing?
Well, yeah, I'd just like to say that it was really very good to be here. And in a way, it was very cathartic for me because this is the first time that I've discussed it publicly. I have very good friends that have no idea of what happened to me this last couple of years. So to be able to talk about it and to be able to talk about it with people who are trying to understand it and trying to do something about it was, as I said, it was very helpful for me, very cathartic. And I got the feeling really that it's something that I would like to do, is to go and talk to more people about what this experience is, because I think that a great many people don't have the opportunity to speak up and to speak to groups. And I speak to you guys all the time. And I was conducting my business as if nothing had ever happened to me. So no one knew that anything did. So to be able to come and say, hey, look, this is what it's like, I think might be something that I should do. And thank you very much for listening, everyone. I appreciated being here very much.
Well, Dorsey, I look forward to connecting with you as well. And she's absolutely right. I know in working with the individual, the 70-year-old woman that I was working with, by the time, and I have a vehicle, I'm an able-bodied person. And, by the time you get them to an appointment or to get on some list, I mean, your day is shot.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And so there needs to be more access. Someone else mentioned something about, having more homeless voices. And if we could have some type of forum or something like that to where we can actually engage those individuals, I think would be very beneficial to get their reactions and their responses and what they're saying. And I definitely look forward to seeing what I can do and working with each one of you to address that.
And so if you have not put your email, thank you, Andre. If you have not put your email in the chat, or if you want to just reach out to me privately, again, I'm happy to send out a group email so everybody has that contact information to go on from here. And, I think just to return it and echo, what we've heard, it's a sense of working all together. Noreen brought to the table, she talked about how, really keeping that focus no matter what your point of view is, keeping your eyes on the prize of what it is that we're trying to do and putting those differences aside because there's no time for it. From Andre, we got that sense of urgency, right? And that, you have that, my high school has 300 classrooms. Somebody could be sleeping in those right now. There's nobody in there. There's nothing. There's empty rooms with air conditioning and heat and a cafeteria that could feed people. If there was the political will, people would be housed. There is not, so they are not. And so that is something that I think that we can push. Dorsey, thank you so much for bringing your story. Lisa as well, if you're still on the call, I really, what you brought to the table was the passion, the fire, the courage to speak. Don't stop speaking and telling that story, because it is something that people need to hear. And your art focus and how that all ties in holistically together then is also something that I think opens people's eyes, because no one should have to go through that, and nobody should have to go through it alone and feel ashamed. Why? Right? No one should feel ashamed. It is not anybody's fault that they are unhoused. It is something that is a community then to bring it all together, that we pull together and all work to try to push forward quickly. Because people, if you're out on the street, I have been there in a car. If you have been there and it's one night, that's a long night. And so you magnify that to a month, to a year, to years, that's too long. And so we can't wait. And I'm so grateful for all of your passion, your energy, your thoughts, even if they're different from the ones that were expressed here. We need you. And so please put your email in the chat. And thank you so much for coming to the Congress. It was really Dorsey and mine's honor to have you here. And Aaron, I really hope that you find some justice in there. And for those of you who are going through that, then just keep reaching out to get those services, because they do exist. They're just really hard to access. And so finding advocates helps. So if you need that, put that in there too. Go ahead, Andre.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to say one more thing in regards to some of the things that Aaron was saying. I think there is a component of what he's saying that we do need to seriously address.
Yes.
Because if there are individuals, very seriously addressed, because if there are individuals who are in certain positions that need to be gone for whatever reason, I think that is something that we also need to address, because if you don't get at the root, you know, you're not going to be able to tackle some of these issues. So there's a considerable amount of validity in what he's saying, and that we need to pay special attention to.
And so in our own communities, I agree. And I think in our own communities, then it's advocating and pushing. Yeah. And so thank you. I am just in debt because you guys are a brain trust, and I just am here to facilitate, and I hope that it was okay. I hope I didn't monopolize too much.
I have to say thank you so much. I've never been heard before. Thank you very much. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Olivia.
All right,
Thank
we're
you for
really
your
glad
hard
everyone
work.
could come. Have a good day. Keep pushing, keep fighting. And
Thank
please reach out.
Olivia.
Please. All right, have a good day.
Bye. Thanks, Olivia.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Belinda.
Amazing.
Thank
Really
you, Aaron.
amazing. Thank you guys so much. Like, honestly, I apologize. I'm used to having to really fight to feel like I get an opportunity.